Hey guys, welcome to my July reading wrap-up. I read an assortment of books in July. Overall, I would say it wasn't like the best reading month. I did a first part wrap-up in the middle of the month, and then I realized I forgot a clip that talked about two of the books, so those will be tacked on to this video. One of them was mediocre and one of them was really good, so funny that I totally missed that clip in the mid-month wrap-up. But first, before we get into all the books that I read in the month of July, or at least in the second half, plus the ones I forgot, a little bit of an announcement. I am going to be taking a few weeks off of BookTube after this video. I don't think that I've ever even taken a week off, and this will be like 2, maybe 3, I don't know exactly, weeks, just for a bit of a break. I've been toying around with this for a little while already, and part of me wants a break really bad and part of me doesn't want to give up posting here once a week. I do enjoy BookTube. I'm just feeling a little bit of a few different emotions, honestly. A little bit of burnout, but also just a bit of discouragement. And it's not really you guys. If you're watching this, it's really not you. It's just, I just think I need to step back a little bit, realize how much I love this space, feel re-inspired, and then come back feeling fresh. So that is my plan. I don't think I'll even really be posting any shorts here. I might, but I will be doing a little bit on Instagram. As of right now, that is my plan anyway. Maybe once I start my radio silence here, maybe I'll just enjoy it. But I think it will just be a break from here. I'm also still posting to my homeschool YouTube channel, and I restarted my personal Instagram channel recently-ish. It's just the whole book side of things, maybe because I don't read as much in the summer. I don't know what it is. Just gonna take a little break. I'll be back. I'll miss you guys, but I think it'll be good to come back feeling refreshed. And as well, I will still be posting over on my Patreon. I post 2 extra videos there each month, plus a bunch of other stuff. So if you really want more of me and don't want a break, you can come join me over there. So let's get on to the clips of all the books that I read in the month of July. I have 2 books to update. I finished 2 today, one of which I started a few weeks ago because it's an ebook. It takes me a while to read. That one is Dear Enemy by Jean Webster. So this is book 2 after Daddy Longlegs. They're kind of like companion novels because in this one we're following Sally, who was one of Judy's college roommates, friends. And Judy has asked Sally to come to the orphanage where Judy grew up and be the superintendent for a while they find someone else, because for some reason they had to fire, or I don't know if she quit, whatever, the old superintendent. And Sally's this young lady, no kids. I mean, I guess people with kids didn't really work back then anyway. I don't know the exact publication date of this, but I think Daddy Longlegs was 1912-ish, so it's, early 1900s at some point. And so Sally is young and she has all these ideas on how to transform the orphanage, and her letters are mostly to Judy, sometimes to a couple other people, but they're just updates on the orphanage, things that she wants to change, little funny stories of different kids. Oh shoot, I should have brought it down. There was definitely some quotes that I wanted to read. Different, kids that are doing well, that are not, struggles they're having, different workers that she's having troubles with, some of the food. And it was really interesting, and I really appreciate classic books like this, because if this was a historical fiction book, there was some points in the book where I was thinking, oh, they probably got some of their historical information wrong, this doesn't seem quite right, but this is actually written back in the 1900s, so it is right. It's just things I didn't realize were maybe from then, or I can't remember offhand. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. I think the physical book might have some what's the word I'm looking for? Stickman drawings like Daddy Longlegs did, but my ebook didn't. So that was disappointing, but there was a few spots where I was I'm pretty sure there's a picture in between here, so I need to get my hands on a physical copy because that's worth rereading. I can't believe I'd never really heard of these books prior to like the last 6 months. Highly recommend reading both Daddy Longlegs and Dear Enemy. The second book that I finished today, and it works out that this is during a page count reading challenge. Apparently I'm just cruising through books. A Castaway in Cornwall. And I kind of went into this with like mediocre expectations, and I would say it met them. I've said before that the reason I've been grabbing some of Julie Clausen's books is because we have the same last name. The only other author that I know of, besides my daughter, that has the same last name is like John Clausen. His books are great, but very different genre since his are children's books. I love his books. But this one is just, it's a fairly typical Christian historical fiction. There's a lot of things where this book and in similar ones where I'm just like, this is not inappropriate for today's standards, by today's standards. But back then it sure would have been. And I think our main character would have like been in a lot of trouble. So what happens in this book is we're following a girl named Laura. She lives in Cornwall on the sea, and a ship is shipwrecked, and she kind of helps drag a guy out of the water and takes care of him as he heals, kind of thing. And there's some secretive things going around. She has a feeling he's not really telling her the truth about who he is and what's going on. And she lives with her, okay, so it's her uncle by marriage, who then remarried someone else, and then that lady has a kid. So technically she's not living with any biological family, and she feels very, it's like almost very Cinderella-esque, whereas her aunt isn't mean, but she definitely sees Laura as competition for her daughter. So she's not, Laura never feels like it's her home, never feels really wanted there except by her uncle. Yeah, and so things happen. I don't know. I have one more of her books. It actually might be wrapped on my TBR cart, and I'm not sure if I want to read it. Like this, it was okay. I think I'm gonna give it 3 stars, but I don't know if I want to like spend my time reading another book like it. So I think the one that I have, if you guys have read other books by her, I did enjoy her Ivy Hill Christmas book. It's much shorter, I think it's like 200 pages, and I liked that because it had a lot of Victorian like Christmas traditions in there, which were unknown to me. That was really cool. But I have her other book, Shadows, something about Shadows in Swanford Abbey or something like that. Is that one significantly less cliche than this one? Because if it's about the same, then I think I'm probably gonna skip it. I need my Christian historical fiction books to have more to them. I think like Jamie Jo Wright does this well, Amanda Dykes does this well, like there's other authors that do it well. This is just a little too much with like just, this is the kind of Christian fiction book that seemed to exist when I was growing up, and I'm not really a fan of the type. It's not terrible, but definitely not my favorite. I just finished Calamity. This is the 3rd book in Brandon Sanderson's Reckoners trilogy. I read books 1 and 2, I think August, September last year, and now finally wrapped it up, which means I finished a series in less than a year, just barely. I enjoyed the series. This is about supervillains. A bunch of supervillains kind of come into the world, and our main character, David, he's trying to fix the world, I guess. His father was killed by one of these supervillains right at the beginning of the 1st book, I think, and he's kind of got a bit of a revenge story happening. At least that's how it starts. And I enjoyed seeing what Sanderson did with this. I don't think it's his best work, but I think compared to other people, it's still great, if that makes sense. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm realizing how much I just enjoy science fiction, especially science fiction over fantasy. I can't say a whole lot about this book because it is the last book in a series. Our main character, David, though, he is really bad at metaphors. He like, I don't know if purposefully, he overthinks metaphors. He makes them pretty terrible. And I love how Sanderson can like write just different characters, humorous characters, flawed characters. Even he can write very like academic and kind of like heavy, but then he can also like write light and fun. He was talking about pre-Calamity, people had been weird. Awesome too. Evidence, Castle. but still pretty weird. And I don't know, I feel like he just makes me like chuckle as I'm reading, and I appreciate that. One of the things I liked in this book is David has a profanity filter on his phone. So what it does is it replaces swears with other words. So he gets a text from someone, didgeridoo invasion of privacy, calling a person without their permission. And then someone's like, didgeridoo profanity filter. You use a profanity filter? What is this, kindergarten? Nah, I said, it's hilarious. Makes people sound really stupid. And it makes me think about authors that use a lot of swearing in their books. And I kind of feel like, I don't know if this is what Sanderson's doing, but I feel like it's a bit of a like nod to writers to be a little bit more creative in their writing. He will sometimes make up swears, like in this series using the word calamity is a swear. But I like that when authors do that, like instead of using everyday swears, so that I don't get them in my head as much when I'm reading it. If they're gonna make something up, like I would much prefer that to the swearing that we have in our everyday life. I still would prefer none, but like if they're gonna do it, I appreciate a little bit of creativity. So yeah, I think this was like a solid 4-star series in my opinion. I enjoyed it a lot. I only have a couple minutes to update before my pizza's ready, but I finished Moby Dick, 2 different versions. I read like 200 and some pages of this and then read this. Wish I would have just been reading this and then finished this-ish. The graphic novel was really good. I don't have a whole lot more to say about it. Read the graphic novel. By this point, the whole book club discussion will have been up for Moby Dick, so I don't feel like it's worth my time to talk about it a ton here because I'll have talked about it a ton more there. Basically, Moby Dick is very classic feeling where it's way longer than it needs to be for the story. I didn't hate the story. I gave it 2 stars on Goodreads. It's like 2.5. I didn't hate the story. I just hated all the extra stuff that didn't have to be there. And like, do we have to have... I love short chapters, but does every chapter title have to explain exactly what is going on in the chapter? Like this one chapter is called Stub and a Flask. Oh, okay. Stub and Flask kill a right whale and then have a talk over him. Like that's the chapter title, and then the chapter's a couple pages and it's too many words. It's not a terrible book. Certain things I liked, but I would just read an abridged version or like a graphic novel version in the future, or that's what I would suggest to people. So it's done. Now I can read other books. I have 2 middle grade books to update. There's probably gonna be some background noise. The kids are playing just outside the door. They're having fun though. 2 middle grade books. Okay, 1, I don't normally update like or share the books that we read for read alouds in our homeschool because they feel very different than my personal reading. But this is one that we started back in the spring and we just finished this week because after the foster kids came back, we didn't read much at all, and it was so good, you guys. The Lost Year by Catherine Marsh. I think this came out earlier this year or possibly last year, and easy 5 stars. The audiobook is also excellent, let me just say. We follow, it's like historical fiction dual timeline. I'm just trying to see when this came out. Yeah, 2023. And I think I got it off of Book Outlet recently. So we follow Matthew right at the start of COVID, and he's kind of going on this journey unintentionally to his great-grandmother's past, and she was like 10 to 12 during the famine in Ukraine, and we follow his grandma and 2 of her cousins, and it's told so well. The grandma and her cousins, they're all girls right around the same age, so it took me a little bit to get the 3 girls straight, but there's different narrators for each person, so that does help. It was so good. I really enjoyed it, and this cover's pretty cool too. I didn't actually realize when we first got it that there's 2 girls there. I really like that, so highly recommend this book. And then I just barely finished All the Greys on Green Street. This is one that when I did my TBR for July, I picked a card that said a book that someone in your family picks, and so my daughter came to my TBR shelf and she picked out this one because she was curious, and I don't know what to say about it. I think I would give it like a 2.75 star. It was okay. We follow Olympia. So it's actually set in the 80s, and there's almost nothing in it that makes you feel like it's the 80s, except they go to like a phone booth at one point. Other than that, I had no idea when it was set. Like there was no real like, oh, this is from the 80s moments. Olympia's father has just run away with another woman. Her mother is sinking very hard into depression, or it's pretty much already begun by the time the book starts. And her mother is an artist, her father is an artist, she's an artist. There's a lot of like tangents of like her remembering things that really didn't matter. I feel like this book could have been edited better. Like chunks could have been removed and things could have flowed a little bit better. There was some hilarious things about cats because we are a cat family primarily. Most of us are more on team cat than team dog. This is like right at the beginning of the book. It has nothing really to do with the book, but this made me laugh out loud, and I wouldn't really recommend reading this book, so I'm gonna share these little snippets from these 2 pages with you. So Olympia's friend, her name is Lady Day. And I never really understood, maybe it said right at the beginning why her name was that. Seems like a strange name to not comment on. Maybe it did. I have a good fact for you, Lady Day said. Her grandma sent her a book of cat facts for her birthday. Okay, what's the biggest difference between cats and dogs? I knew the answer to that one. If you die in your apartment, your dog won't eat you, your cat will. And then, skipping ahead a little bit. You think Sammy would eat you if you died? I asked Lady Day. I'm pretty sure she would. Lady Day wiped her long fingers. Harsh, I said. What do I care if I'm dead? Why should she go hungry when I'm lying there like a big, stupid roast beef? Something's going to eat me eventually. It may as well be Sammy. So that cracked me up. But the book, I don't know, and I still don't really, I think Olympia's last name was Gray, but it was barely ever mentioned. I don't understand the title of the book. And I feel like titles should make a bit of sense, a little bit more than like, I'm kind of confused. I'm assuming they lived on Greene Street, but it wasn't really talked about a ton. Wouldn't really recommend it. It wasn't terrible, but like it just wasn't great. It's about time, but I read a book that I really enjoyed. I actually don't have a clue why I got this book from the library, but I got out That Sounds Fun by Annie F. Downs. It's a Christian nonfiction book. The subtitle is The Joys of Being an Amateur, The Power of Falling in Love, and Why You Need a Hobby. And I've had it from the library for a few weeks. Like I said, don't remember why I requested it, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm saying it's a 5-star. I feel like it was just not quite a 5-star, but I loved it enough that on Goodreads, that's what I've rated it. It was honestly just a really good reminder of how, I guess her whole premise is kind of like we've lost Eden, and kind of like in some ways how we can recreate fun, aka maybe a little bit of Eden here on Earth, but how it's never going to be perfect because we live in a fallen world. And it was just a good reminder for me about the power of fun. I didn't realize until I was reading this how not fun I've gotten in the last few years. I think this is just like one of the results of becoming an adult, and like I'm always thinking like if I do this possibly fun thing, there's like these possible repercussions like 5 steps down the road. Like I'm sometimes maybe being a little too responsible, and it's getting in the way of fun. And this is making me think when I make my autumn goals that I want to have like something on there like find a way to like laugh on a regular basis or something like that. So a few little quotes I will read. First of all, she talked about like one of the subtitles is The Joys of Being an Amateur, and the actual definition of an amateur is different. Well, kind of how we as society view being an amateur is only one of the definitions. Another definition is a person who engages in a study, sport, or other activity for pleasure rather than for financial benefit or professional reasons. The definition we usually use is a person inexperienced or unskilled in a particular activity. Usually if we're calling ourselves an amateur, it's like we're putting ourselves down. We're not saying, oh, this is just something we do for fun. And I thought that was like a good thing to think about and kind of maybe change my mindset there. I really enjoyed this quote. To me, making strong, fun memories are some of the best ways to partner with pain you feel and give it purpose. Fun is never meant to replace pain, or better said, fun will never replace pain, but fun can walk alongside it. You can hold them both and see what happens when they dance together. So her writing, like, I maybe have listened to Annie F. Downs. She has a podcast. I think I listened to it like near the beginning of it. I don't really know where she stands, where her like theological standpoint is on things. But I still feel like I can get a lot from her book, whether or not we completely align, which I don't think we necessarily do. Her writing felt a lot like Shauna Niequist's in some ways, but not quite. A little bit more playful, which makes sense. I used to really like Shauna Niequist's writing, and then I know she kind of took a few stands on a few things that I didn't agree with, so I don't read her stuff anymore, but I really love her writing. But it's hard when you're like having a space where you're recommending books, because sometimes it feels like you can be, some people might assume that you're like recommending everything that author or like author/person stands for, and that's not always true. So there was like a whole section about savoring things, and she has a tattoo that says "savor this," and it's not like just in the fun highlights of your life is she trying to savor things, it's also in the hard, painful moments. And when I was 18, I moved to England to become an au pair, and before I left, my dad told me, he said, like, just stop every now and then and say, like, I'm in England. And his whole idea was just to like savor this, acknowledge where you're at. And I think with our society these days, we're like so fast paced that we just hop around, we don't really live in the present. And I like the idea of just savoring things. So something I'm gonna be thinking about a lot. I think I want to write this down. Oh yeah, she mentioned something about John Mark Comer, and then I was like, oh yeah, her writing reminds me of his The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I feel like their writing is similar. But she was talking about Garden City, which is a book I have not read, and maybe I should. And then she was talking about slowing down. So Holly and I, as of right now, it was last night that we were reading or talking about Moby Dick for our book discussion. And she here was saying, a theme I'm feeling in my life, in my faith life, in my relationship life, and in my hobby life, is that slow is better. Slow is good. For all the moments I want love at first sight, there is just something about the beauty of falling in love slowly and practicing hobbies slowly and living life slowly. And we were talking about how, like, I struggle with just like wanting, once I've started a book, I just want to finish it. And the idea of just reading books slowly, especially classics, but books in general. And I read this like right after the book club, and so it felt very fitting. And yeah, so that sounds fun. I want to read more of her stuff now. This was really good for where I'm at in life right now, so I really enjoyed that. And I'm hoping I can finish one more book here before the end of the month. I just finished my last book of the month, Evil Under the Sun by Agatha Christie. Now, I was really tempted. I heard that this was kind of a whodunit book by her, and I was really tempted to try to solve it. I've done a number of trying to solve Agatha Christie mysteries in the past, and then when it came down to it, I just wanted to read it and enjoy it. And I think I'm glad I didn't try to solve it, because I'm not sure it's really entirely possible. So Poirot is at a hotel for the summer. Actually, quite a few, I feel like quite a few of her books take place on holiday. And I think maybe that was just more common back then. But it kind of makes me wish I had the life of Miss Marple and Poirot. They're just always on holiday. But anyway, Poirot's there, and after he's been there for a bit, this other lady and her husband arrive, and right away it's like something's gonna happen. This lady just like pulls men towards her with her personality, and you know something's gonna go down. I do enjoy it when the mystery takes place in the story. Agatha Christie has a few where the mystery takes place before the story, sometimes years before. Those are not my favorite. I like to kind of have the stage set and then go into the story. And we have our cast of characters. I don't know, it reads like a whodunit. I thought I was getting it, and then when it was revealed, I'm like, I don't know if that could have been solved. I don't. Did you solve it? Have you read this one and solved it? I feel like it's not very likely that it could have been solved, but I did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. Not like one of my absolute favorite from her, but I definitely enjoyed it. You know, if you've been here before, I really enjoy Agatha Christie. I love a lot of her books. Very strongly dislike a few of them as well. But yeah, I would recommend this one if you haven't read it. It was a good summer vibes kind of book because they're on the seaside kind of thing, a lot of sunbathing and water and stuff like that going on, and you know, like obviously a murder as well. A very nice like beachy mystery read, I think. And that closes out this video. I would love to hear some of your favorite books from July. Did you have like a better reading month than me? I hope so. Yeah, any recommendations you have for me in the next little bit as I take a break from here, let me know. I will still be active over on my Patreon, so if you really want more bookish content from me, come over to Patreon and join me there.